Good.
Welcome to WKRP Montrose, a radio station masquerading as a podcast about Montrose, Colorado, and the Western Slope.
All right, Rob. I know, and I know everybody knows our guests that are here. We'll announce them again.
How do they know?
Well, they know because you already freaked me out on this episode, and I decided to go directly into the 3-screen shot versus the 2-screen shot, which I had talked about.
It's a great idea,
right?
But it freaks me out when you want to change things up.
Oh, see, now you're trying to be nice because you know that I'm about to just take this one on the chin about as good as I can. All right, everybody.
You don't have to mention it.
Welcome to WKRP Montrose. We are back with guests that were previously
back?
Back again. Shady's back.
Yeah.
Tell a friend. Did I get that right? I did get it all right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I thought you didn't like rap music.
I like Eminem.
Okay. All right. Well, Eminem is rap music. Are you guys big rap fans? No?
I like everything. Yeah, I like maybe Johnny Cash most for me.
Okay.
So.
All right. So thank you very much for coming back, Matt and James. Matt Jenkins, James Pavlich. Did I pronounce the last name correct?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Okay. I really appreciate you guys coming back. For those of you who don't know, these two gentlemen have already sat through the litany of questions that we put out at them and handled them all beautifully. As a matter of fact, it was one of the best interviews we've had. Here's the problem. Dennis forgot to turn on the audio.
Press that potato button.
Yeah, I guess I deserve this one. I deserve it. So there's a thing. There's a lot of buttons. There's a lot of confusing things going on. Mm-hmm. I managed to get it right most of the time.
Almost every time.
Yeah. Those of you that are listening and watching, any of you that have watched more than one episode know that that's not true. This is not the first time that Dennis has messed up. Hopefully it's the last. So that being said, gentlemen, thank you for joining us again. We have you on the really nice couch to talk about the most recent Bill 5A coming up for a new high school here in Montrose, Colorado. I think the general consensus is that everybody believes that we do need a new high school, but there are a lot of questions about the process, the cost, the development, the schedule, lots of things that you guys out there on Facebook and in the ether, when we asked, had a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. The main one is obviously the price and how that figure was arrived at and all that stuff. But
right.
So just want to clarify though. So are
you going to throw out the basic math?
No. Okay. I'm just going to. So Matt, you are the public information officer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Jim.
Jim's probably what most folks call me.
The director of operations for the Montrose County School District. So if you two don't know the answer to any of these questions, nobody does. Fit? All right. Well, we'll find out.
So you're saying we have the right people in the right seats?
I think we have. Yeah.
Okay. That feels fair.
So how do you want to start? Why don't we give our guests an opportunity to, give their opening remarks? Why do we need a new school?
Do you guys feel like okay, that's a good question.
Well, yeah, I do want to start off and say all the information that folks are looking for can be found at mcsd.org. That's our webpage, montrosecountyschoooldistrict.org. We've got a dedicated 2024 bond landing page with some attached websites to that landing page. And then additionally, for folks that are on social media, our Facebook page has a lot of information as well. So those two places, you can find almost all the information we're going to talk about. And if we find through the conversation and the questions you guys bring to us that have been brought to you, we can continuously update that information.
And is there an email address on the website?
There is. So on that landing page, the first page you go to, mcsd.org, is our school district landing page. You'll see toward the top 2024 bond. Okay. And on that landing page, toward the middle of this page, it says, if you've got questions, click here, and then it opens up an email to me.
So there's no excuse.
Yeah, and we've actually received. Received. I don't know the exact number, but several emails which tells me that people are, one, visiting the site, which is good, and then two, they're going directly to us for accurate information, which we're grateful for also.
So if you're seeing this on Facebook, we'll definitely we'll link to the Facebook page, or we'll mention the Facebook page on there. And then, of course, if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or Apple iTunes or whatever, in the description, we'll put the link to those as well.
Well, and if you have questions, don't just rant on Facebook. There is a place you can go to find answers. So, don't complain if you don't go looking for the answers.
Is that your PSA statement for the day, your public service announcement that you wanted to make sure that people know?
People complain about stuff.
I mean, I think
complaining is okay, but constructive,
I think also there are open houses going on at Montrose High School every Wednesday at 6 p.m., if I remember right.
Yeah.
That where you can go and kind of look at the school yourself and see what we're talking about. I think you asked our opening comments. I just want to say, this has been a journey to get to the point where the Board of Education decided to put this ballot initiative on there for a bond. About a 3.5-year journey to be exact, with the board doing a master capital planning process where we assess the quality or the condition of all of our buildings and try to figure out where we should be focusing our dollars, our deferred maintenance dollars, and then potentially whether or not there were any capital construction needs. Out of that project, we came up with a number of priorities. If you look, there's a link on that website that takes you to I think it's 8 different priorities. The first one was identified as number 1. This was a community focus groups participated in this process, and they came up with deferred maintenance as the number 1 priority. Like, how do we maintain the over 1 million square feet of facility that we as the district maintain across 14 different campuses? The second priority was the Early Childhood Center, and the third priority identified was Montrose High School. Montrose High School is obviously the biggest building that we maintain. And so the Board of Education then asked us to kind of see what the community thought. Where, out of those top priorities, where should we be focusing our efforts? And that survey, you guys remember, kind of came out last winter. And what we heard from that survey was resoundingly, yes, Montrose High School is a need, and that should be the number 1 priority. I think, we obviously agreed with that. From a scope and scale standpoint, there's no way to address the needs at Montrose High School without going to the community. The way Colorado is set up, to do capital construction, you got to ask your voters. And so what we then began after hearing that feedback is we started a conceptual design process after putting out an RFP to architects and architect firms and saying, hey, we think we need to figure out what to do with Montrose High School. And we had very good interest in that. A number of firms came, over 8 different firms submitted on the project and competed. And ultimately we selected Blythe, White, and Motley. So Blythe Group and Company. Blythe Group is out of Grand Junction. They helped us build Montrose High School along with Phil Motley, his architecture firm that's here local. And they teamed up with White Group, which is a national firm specializing in education. And so we got started with them in the winter. And
let me pause you there for a second, because if I heard you correctly, you said the Blythe Group helped with Phil Motley build the high school as it is now?
No. Columbine Middle School.
Columbine Middle School.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that was just a misstep. I heard it too.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you meant, they built Columbine.
They helped us build Columbine Middle School in 2017.
Okay.
So it's important to some of the questions that we're going to ask, because the group that you ultimately decided to go with for this design for the high school also just built a high school regionally.
Yes, they built Grand Junction High School.
And that high school, that project came in at budget.
Under
budget and on time.
On time.
Just like Columbine Middle School did when we had worked with them previously.
Okay. So maybe that's a good place to, you had more, and I'm sorry.
I could go like 30
I figured you could.
I'm giving this talk a couple times.
I want to make sure that, there was so much we found out, especially since we get to do this the second time. There was
no pressure for us to.
Yeah, we know your
got practice now. It's like a dress rehearsal.
Exactly. Well, so I think we haven't actually mentioned the price yet, right? I don't think. So do you want to tell us?
Go ahead. Give them the sticker shock.
Yeah.
Sure. It's $198 million is what is on the ballot.
Okay.
So that's the bond that we would need the capital construction dollars we would need to build or replace Montrose High School.
Okay.
And so one of the obvious questions that comes in, and we know it, is that, why build a new one versus, fix the current one? And would that be cheaper? Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah, that was what we charged. That was the next 30 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So essentially during that conceptual design process, we asked them to look at two things. What would it cost us to remodel, and how might we do that? And then would it be, and what would it cost us to rebuild? I'd like to build new, and what would it cost us? What we found out after that was not only did our community focus groups, our stakeholder groups, our community leaders prefer new construction to end the cycle of Band-Aids, but it was also more cost effective. And a lot of that revolves around the fact that the length of construction is significantly reduced, and halved, in fact, by building new. There's a variety of reasons, which I'm sure you guys will ask us about, but the bottom line is we saved in the initial estimates around $17 or $18 million by going with
building new, by knocking it down.
And then since those initial estimates, we're now we're like closer to I don't want to like 237 versus 198. So, it's almost $40 million cheaper with the design we have now.
So there's already been a red line to it where we did. This wasn't, I think it's important for people to know that the 198 wasn't just like, oh, that's what they said, and we said yes, and we're going to move it. We already looked at all the opportunities to reduce the cost.
Yeah, for me, that's a common misunderstanding. It's like, to get to this 198, has been a journey on understanding the programming that the building is going to have in it to be sustainable for another 80 years. And then additionally, to make the spaces as efficient as possible, because we know really the only way to reduce the cost of construction is by reducing the square footage. And so rather than some communities who might say, I feel like our community would go for fill in the blank number, and they go for a bond, and then after that, they use that as constraint on the plan. What we really said is, I don't want to ask for more than we need, because we know that whatever we ask for is going to put a burden on this community financially. So we want to ask for exactly what we need, and we want to know what it's really going to cost. And so that's what this process did. We're talking 3.5 years, and in earnest, and we're continuing with schematic design, but in earnest since last winter, we've been really working on those costs.
So, Rob,
to add to that also, the question of whether to remodel versus rebuild, for folks that are just coming to this issue brand new and don't know, Montrose High School has been added on to 8 times in 80 years, over 80 years. The original school was built in 1940. And so, every 10 to 15 years, there was another addition for another good reason. But we're at a point where we can't just keep adding on to the site.
Right. So I do have a question.
Yeah, you go, and then I got
you talked about it is a burden on the community, but it's, in some people's opinion, essential. And I don't know how this process works entirely, but the bond is set to last 25 years, correct?
Correct.
Why wouldn't the bond stop when it's raised enough money? What if it raises enough money after 20 years?
Well, you'll notice in the bond language, in the ballot language, it talks about the total repayment cost.
Right.
So in the selling of the bonds, we can't raise more than to do the debt service on it. You can't raise more than $395 million.
Okay.
And that equates to $16.7 million a year. Now, the ballot language does not speak to, we're going to do a 25-year note, a 20-year note, or whatever, because that's part of the bond sales. Like that's going to be packaged contingent upon a successful bond campaign. And then the bankers will then sell those municipal bonds, which are tax exempt in Colorado, and a pretty safe investment for folks with a guaranteed rate of return. And then that, we believe will be coming in on that 25-year note, because it makes sense to spread the costs of this construction over the future growth of the community. So in other words, if you did a shorter term bond, right, then that would put what are
more of a burden on each
household in the near term versus spreading that burden out over 25 years.
So obviously property values will go up in the next every year, 5 years, in the next 25 years. But what you're saying then, if I understand correctly, is there will also be more people.
Right.
So the value of your house will go up and you will pay incrementally more every year, but there will also be more people to share that burden.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you look at that $16.7 million raised annually is an important number in there. And so the mill rate we've given, I think there's a video that posted today to help folks to really dial in an exact number versus, a lot of our language has been around, between $8 and $9 per $100,000 of actual value in your home. The new video shows you how to walk through Eagle Web on the county assessor's site and calculate your exact annual increase.
It's a 65-second video, and you will hear my soothing voice walk you through this process. But I tested it on several different folks as lay people, and they're like, "Yes, I understand that." So we've tried to make it as easy as possible.
His first voice was kind of not.
There was a draft where I was really tired on Friday afternoon, and it was like, "That's not going to work." So
I gotta tell you though, that's like your doctor saying, "I have a really good bedside manner. I have a really soothing voice. This isn't gonna hurt at all."
Right. And you know what's about to happen.
Pull out this giant needle. Okay, but I think that is important, and that's kind of what I wanted to get at. Is it's easy to talk about things in technical terms.
Sure,
Most people don't understand what that means, and I'm one of them, and So I think a 65-second video that explains it in more layman-like terms is a good thing for people.
Well, and the video just shows you how much this is going to cost you, as a property owner.
Yeah, the video is more just breaking down how to figure out what the actual cost is going to be to you. Yeah. Because if you're going onto the county assessor's office website, you're looking up your property address.
Yeah, and that's where we direct you to Eagle Web.
All right, so that leads to a couple of other questions. But the first question I wanted to go back to, you talked about how many times the school's been added on to.
Sure.
Do you guys, how many, you said over the last however many years it's been added on to 8 times. In the last decade, how many times has there been construction projects related to the high school?
So that's if you're talking a major capital construction, there have been 0.
Okay.
If you're talking about deferred maintenance, millions of dollars worth of work has been done.
Give us an example of deferred maintenance.
So the heating and cooling systems in the building, we have competed for and won best grants to replace to add air conditioning into the building. Right. I think that was done in kind of the in their late aughts. And then we, including up and through the last couple of years, have replaced HVAC units on the quad section of the building. The latest project we won was for the Lloyd McMillan Gym, which is the portion of the building that we plan to save. And so right now that was completed here in this summer. We did a project, and that was about a $4 million project.
And how much was the gym itself as an add-on project? Do you know how much that was?
I don't. That's a new one. I haven't been asked the last bond, but yeah.
I'm just curious in the sense that, hey, there is a scenario where we've kicked to some extent, this is going to hurt a little bit because we've kicked the ball down the road so far.
Yeah, I can tell you
almost as far as it sounds like we possibly could.
The value of that gym, it's about 13,000 square feet. And so when you look at your square foot costs for hard construction at around 542, I think is where we're coming out on this project. When you're talking about just the materials and labor to the hard cost to build per square foot. I can't do that math in my head, but that's a decent amount of, I see Matt pulling out his calculator.
Yeah.
So.
But you're talking about kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
When was the last time this was brought up or something of this nature was brought up?
To the community?
Yeah.
I think that last bond was passed the last construction on the building was in 2003. And so I know they passed a bond in the late 90s.
Well, and I think salient also, I don't know if I like the metaphor of the idiom kicking the can because, when you come take a tour on Wednesday from 6 to 7 through October, you'll see a very well-maintained space, right? We have great custodians. We have great facilities folks. I mean, they're doing the absolute best they can with that current site, but it's an 84-year-old building that has been added on to 8 times. Okay. And so, there are a number of challenges.
It's that return on investment, right? Yeah. So you get to a point where you're investing in a facility that doesn't have the runway to return the money you're putting in.
Yeah, like you used the Band-Aid term, right? But has the community been asked to fund a new high school entirely in the last
30 years?
30 years?
I don't think the community's been asked to fund I know the construction of the Olathe Middle High School. That was in, I think the original construction of those buildings is 80s, 70s.
Okay.
And then they were part of that bond that passed in the late 90s. But as far as total new construction, probably since Olathe High School.
Because the idea of kicking the can down the road suggests that the community have been asked and said, no, maybe later. No, maybe later. But the community, regarding Montrose High School, hasn't actually been asked to do this.
Yeah, I'm going to stand behind my statement. I think that if you look at the high school and you've spent any time over there, you realize how old it is.
But how many no's have there been from the community?
Well, but hold on a second.
The high school?
Hold on a second. When was Columbine? Columbine was just done
2017.
It passed in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when did the construction finish on it?
It was 2019, I think.
Okay. So just a couple of years ago. How old was Columbine? Was it older or younger than the high school?
I believe it was.
Well, there's no way that it was older than 1940.
It was younger,
But it was pretty old.
So so we've already replaced. I just feel like that's an important thing to say. We've already identified and replaced a building that was younger than the building we're talking about. And so, I think to some extent.
Well, and a good cost comparison too that I think is relevant is, if you look at Columbine Middle School, that houses about a third of the amount of students at Montrose High School, right? In several different ways, you can see that, this is going to be a bigger project. Obviously, if we have, 3 times the number of kids, then the cost is going to be more significant. If you, again, this journey that Jim talked about, I've learned a ton. I mean, I'm a former school teacher and now a current school communicator, but I just learned a ton of new stuff regarding, engineering, mechanical, from the architects, from the, capital market guys, the bankers. And so I've learned a ton. We're certainly not experts in all of those different areas, but we think we've got a really solid plan with, folks that we're working with that have a very good, solid track record of, producing.
I don't think I know we've got a good solid plan, and we vetted those numbers across the state of Colorado to make trust but verify this entire process. And I am confident that what we have packaged for our community is competitive to any other secondary school construction in the state, and the best value we can get for building on the western slope of Colorado. We picked a all-star team, and they have done an outstanding job, and our community has driven the decisions that were made in the building, the folks that were involved,
Right.
And so I'm proud of the product that this entire team of folks have put together. 60 plus meetings went on during the spring with all the stakeholders in the building, all the staff in the building, plus parent, student, community leader, community member teams. And, it's hard though, because, our community is much bigger than the, couple hundred folks, close to 500 folks that were involved in that process. And so it's getting everybody educated and understanding the amount of work that's gone into coming up with this number.
So we need to jump into the questions. Like for sure. We've
dive in.
We've had the conversational piece, I think is fair to say. And I just want to make sure that we get to the questions because last time we found out that we didn't have enough time to ask all the questions. So one of the first ones that was online that I think got a lot of traction and is partly just needs a explanation was, if we had passed recreational marijuana in the area, wouldn't that help ease the burden of the cost here because of tax dollars that would be collected by recreational marijuana? Do you guys want to address that real quick? For sure, because I've heard some really good explanations.
I think it's a quick one to address, frankly, isn't it?
For sure.
That isn't a way to fund capital construction in Colorado. Well,
school.
Marijuana.
Make sure you specify school.
Yeah, school construction in Colorado. So, there are marijuana dollars available, and I know everybody remembers when they passed legal marijuana, they're like, money will go to schools. It does, through the BEST grant program, as well as lottery dollars and some other general fund from the state of Colorado. Rural districts can compete for those dollars through the BEST grant. When it first started, it was rocking, and they were bringing in. We were the only game in town for
meaning Colorado.
Yeah, in Colorado, not Colorado was the only game in town for legal
recreational marijuana. So
Thank you.
we had tourism coming in for it.
Yeah,
there were a lot
100%.
more dollars contributed to that program.
Right. $390 million in 2017. Now there's $120 million available.
Okay, so let me stop you right there because this was something that we had more time to research. This is the second time. But we actually talked about this a little bit. So there's less money in the fund overall. There are now more projects vying for that money.
Right.
And are every year.
And so the scenario is, and I don't have the stats up in front of me, but I had looked at it. There are basically 2 or 3 times more projects than there are allowable dollars, or allowable spots that they will assign.
A good example is like districts that really get awarded the small number of capital construction grants for like total schools, like the West End. You know, West End can pass a bond for $1 million. That school costs close to $27 or $29 million. Best funded in the first round, they funded them $19 million to $1 million. And then they had to go back right away because of escalation. And, you know, I think they ended up going back twice to complete that school. Beautiful school up there. Right. But that's what BEST is for. It's to help rural communities that could not raise the capital construction funds on their own to
Montrose is actually, I guess, thriving to the point where we are no longer that competitive in that
not
aspect.
For a cap, not for a 60 or 40% match, like or 90-10.
Do you guys have any idea how much, or were there any BEST funds allocated to the Grand Junction High School? And if so, how much was it?
About I think around. I don't think. It's around $10 million.
I'm not going to hold you to the number.
Yeah, it's around $10 million.
We'll ballpark it, right?
So about around 10% is the best we can hope for. We will compete for best. We will likely get some dollars from them. But, you know, if they were to fund Montrose High School with what is our typical match rate, which is somewhere between 40 and 50%, which means we would put up 50% of the cost and they would match 50% as well, then that would take their entire budget, which they're not going to do.
So it's not going to happen. It's
the very shortest response to your question is that is not a viable solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to tell you guys.
I took it as an opportunity to talk about BEST.
We have to, I know this is a scenario that's kind of contradictory to the idea of talking about schools, but all of it's making me a little bit parched. So I need to drink something really quickly.
This is shameless, but we don't care. I just so happen to have a growler of delicious Pomona beer.
Is that product placement?
Yeah, we're very grateful to Pomona Brewing for being a sponsor of all of the WKRP episodes.
And I especially like episodes like this, where those two are working and can't drink any of our beer.
Yeah, so
we pretend to bring it in.
We are on the clock.
So Pomona Brewing, thank you for being a sponsor of the episode. Thank you for keeping us in libations because it helps.
I have a quick question. I don't have kids. Why should I contribute?
That's a fantastic question. So the answer is, and I did a decent job in our first. I think I did a decent job.
You did do
the
a great
first
job.
time we recorded this.
Don't screw it
I'm hoping I can replicate that. So the short answer that I tell folks that ask that question, which is a very fair and valid question, it won't come as a surprise to a lot of folks that we do have an older demographic in Montrose County, and we have folks that are on a fixed income. Mm-hmm. The shortest response I make to them is, I'll almost guarantee in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to need to go to Montrose Regional Health because you're going to have some kind of health issue happen. In order to get the health care you need at the hospital, at other medical providers, we have to produce employees for those organizations. And so, the health of your the health of your community, the health of your macro and micro economy is absolutely dependent on the health of your schools. Right. And we need 21st century learning environments and spaces that can produce the employees for our healthcare field, for our manufacturing field, for our construction field. Every time you go shop somewhere, every time you go, pay for some service anywhere, the schools, some school has produced the employees for that organization.
Think about
go ahead.
What is it? About 60% of our students stay here locally.
Right.
And so, we are training the workforce that is going to make this community run. And we have to invest in our future. These are,
So if you like your power on, if you like, if you like your house to
100%
be able to withstand the Colorado winters, if you'd like to be able to have your air conditioning or services in the summer.
All right, we don't want to get accused of bias here.
No, I'm
that
just
was a
saying.
softball question.
Yeah.
It's a good answer. I mean, it's a perfectly good answer. I mean, give him a hardball.
All right, I got to go.
Knuckleball, is that a term you people use in that sport?
I'm going to throw you a slider.
Okay,
all right,
do
so I'm going to tell you I'm going to do it before I do it. So here's the question: Why are we not? We're in part a tourism economy. Why are we not making our tourists help pay for this bill? Like, why isn't lodging taxes, part of this equation or figured into the cost? It seems like there's more people coming in that are spending more money on their visitations than we are, I think, daily. I don't know if that's right or not, but that was the question. Like, was that considered? I'm sure it was, but was it considered, and why not if it was considered?
It was considered. It greatly complicates how we would be able to make the case to voters, is one answer. The other answer is it just will not raise the revenue required to do capital construction, especially of a project of the scope and size of Montrose High School. We need to raise, you can see it in the ballot language there, $16.7 million annually to do the debt service on this project. And when you look at the types of taxes that would be required to even come close to that, it's prohibitive to the local economy.
We're not going to get onto this, but that is also on the ballot this year, right?
Lodging tax.
Is a lodging tax. We're going to cover that in another episode.
All right. Rob just asked you, I don't have kids, right? He said he didn't have kids. My daughter's already gone through the school system, and thank you very much. So I feel obligated to, pay it forward, if you will, or pay it back to that extent. But how do you justify, what is your conversation to people that have larger pieces of property in the commercial, side of our economy here, going, hey, look, it's one thing for me, who I have a house and it's $9 per 100,000, roughly $9 per 100,000 of value in my house per month, right? Okay, that's something that I can definitely swallow. I'm lucky enough to be in that situation. But you start multiplying that times, a lot bigger numbers, or start adding zeros to that, that's significant. And in most cases, let's say in a commercial property, that's going to get passed down to the tenant in some way, shape, or form eventually, which is the business that's usually there. For our farming community, that's going to be significant as well. I mean, what do you guys like? What is the response to that? Because I'm sure you've heard it, right?
Yeah, I want to do a preface and then you go. So the first thing I want to say is please watch that 65-second video so that you are getting a true impact and you are based in fact on what you're responding to, because what we've seen and what happens commonly with school referenda or any bond measure similarly is sometimes folks come up with a calculation that is wildly off. Right. And so the very first step is make sure you know what your true tax impact is. And you can visit our website or social media to find out how to do that via the assessor's website. Jim?
Yeah, that was actually where I was going to go. Ultimately, that's a decision, the business, that's why we go to voters in Colorado. You get to make that decision. The school district does not set the corporate tax rate or the agricultural tax rate or the residential for that matter. We do have the ability through a bond measure to collect a mill for capital construction, also for other types of mills in Colorado, which our school district has never chosen to do. I just want to hit a second point on what Matt's saying. I've worked with some families, some agricultural families that own large amounts of agricultural land and some commercial properties, and help them figure the tax impact. And at the beginning of the conversation versus the end, they were in a much different place in understanding what it was going to cost. What's different about residential versus agricultural versus commercial is how the assessed value of that land. And so sometimes with our agricultural land, we have, when we talk about a real estate value or the resale value of the property, it far exceeds what the county's assessed value on that ground is. And there's a lot of, that's Brad Hughes' job. That's not mine. But it's really when those agricultural families look at the assessed value of their properties, it's dramatically different than what the real estate value is. And so when people were using the spreadsheet that was circulating on social media, if you're really clear on all those numbers, you can get really close to your total cost. But I'll tell you, most everybody that I've had the opportunity to talk to, which is a couple handfuls of people, when we've sat down and connected with Brad Hughes and done the numbers, the calculating was vastly different than what they originally
So don't
thought.
be alarmed without actually going through this process. Don't be, because there are people out there, I assume, who are very pro this bond measure, and some who are very against it. If you're against something, there's a chance that you might want to put information out there to make people believe something that
just
might
make sure you know what the
necessarily be
facts
true.
are.
Yeah,
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah,
go take a look. The resources
I think this
there.
video we've got up that Matt with his soothing voice put on, it's like that gets you the exact number, and then you have the correct information, which is all we're looking for to make a decision.
All right, so let's go ahead.
No,
okay,
I'll go. I know some things from last time, so I'm going to ask
get
you
it
a
out,
couple of
Junior.
things, but so what happens if this isn't funded now, but it's funded next year or the year after or the year after that? It's going to get cheaper, right? No.
Quite the opposite.
Doesn't work like that.
No,
Okay.
escalation we know on historically over the last 14 years on the Western Slope averages about 1% a month. So you look at over a year, it's 12 to 1 to 1.5% a month. So it's 12 to 14% annually.
Right.
You see in some of our informational literature we have on there that even at 10%, a more conservative estimation of escalation, this process will, this project will cost us $19.8 million more dollars to do the exact same thing if we wait a year.
In just a year.
Yeah. So then when you start thinking about, like if we tweak this or that, if we move this or this item on that site, we could save X percentage points. You really got to think about that in terms of also of the longer we wait, the escalation.
Okay, so this was something that last time you and I did not agree on.
Right.
I still don't necessarily agree with you, although math is math, right? So I'm going to have to defer to the fact that you would know more than I would about the monthly percentage of increase in the cost, especially since it's
we're talking about school construction, right?
No, I get it. I get it. That's what I'm saying. I'm leaving it up to you for the professionalism side of that. I wouldn't expect you to,
totally.
Yeah. Be able to push buttons like I can.
Last time I left here and I was like, were they filming that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what
we were filming. We just weren't recording the audio.
Right. But I knew it was coming back. I just knew it. The idea that it's going to cost more, I think a different way that I want to approach that conversation is kind of similar to how we just approached the idea of recreational marijuana and the best. And like, I think the discourse online is the idea that, hey, there's got to be something that we can do to reduce this. Right. And the question is that I have is, let's break that down. So if you could save 10 or 15 million on the project, what is that really going to change my taxable dollar, at the end of the year versus take something away that could be a very necessary amenity in the school? Last time that we spoke, since we can't go back to it, none of you guys know that we did this. We talked about like the climbing wall and the design. We talked about the amount of glass and the finishes and things like that. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you had a really good explanation that factors back to cost.
Right.
Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah,
real quick?
sure. I mean, that's part of when I said I'm really proud of the team that we assembled and the feedback we've gotten during this process. The finishes on that building, it's not an ugly building, what we're presenting, I hope, when folks look at it. But what they don't understand is those vertical panels on the 3-story section of the building, those are metal finishes on there. We have a standing seam metal roof on it. We have a concrete block facade on there. We have concrete tilt-up walls with the facades on them around. It's very efficient construction on that site. We worked hard to keep costs low and to make costs and finishes that will last for an 80-year life cycle on the building. The windows in the building are required by code in Colorado because Colorado school code says, hey, natural light makes students perform better. It creates a healthier building.
Maybe that's why this podcast is so rubbish, because we're subterranean. There's no natural light.
Thanks, Rob.
Well,
I guess
Jim, get rid of the climbing wall.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So then if you think about the climbing wall, I mean, we're talking a hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not talking about a difference, an appreciable difference in your property tax.
Right.
You know, if we talk about, even if we reduced, like, I think the number you just threw out was $10 million out of the building, which I don't know is possible without cutting programming. Okay. And so, but say you could do that, then, you know, you're looking at a change in your tax impact by $1 maybe a month. And so, you know, it's not an appreciable difference to the taxpayer. You know, we're not going to significantly reduce your tax burden, but we are going to create a building that doesn't meet the programming needs, which means we're potentially setting ourselves up to come back to the community again in 10 to 15 years, like they did this last time, and ask for more money. And for me, I've been, you know, Dr. Stevenson, you know, charged us with doing this well. And I've been hyper-focused on not getting us into a situation where you look at the original structure, they came back in less than 10 years after they finished, or 10 years after they finished construction of that thing, asking the community for more money to add in more facility. And for me, you know, we're designing this building to last and to be able to meet the needs of our community.
You also mentioned previously, but there's been something circulating online too about comparing the cost of this school to things like schools in New York City, and somebody compared it to 5-star hotels and things like that. But I'll remember from last time you talked about how it costs more to build things in places like Western Colorado.
Right.
Can you
and I think also there's some, you know, if we're going to look at what's that website? It's like RBC is one of the ones that tracks commercial construction in Colorado. So you look at the average cost of commercial construction in Denver, where there's a high availability of contractors, where we're close to supply lines and all that sort of a deal. Like they're looking between $480 and $590 a square foot to build secondary schools, high schools. We build on the western slope of Colorado. We're in better shape than like Rangeley, you know, or Leadville. But it is more expensive to build out here. There is less availability of contractors for us to work with. That was one of the things that the Board of Education, I was happy to see them lean forward and select a construction manager, general contractor in August, so that we locked in our general contractor for this project that is used to working, you know, ultimately awarded to FCI, and they work on the western slope. They're based out of Grand Junction, and they know the costs that it is to build out here. They just finished a high school in Grand Junction, and so all that has informed our cost estimating. But it is more expensive to build on the western slope of Colorado.
Okay, fair enough. But the high school that's in Grand Junction is for how many students?
It was designed for 1,600 students.
And how many students do we have at the Montrose High School?
We have 1,250 students. I think the October count's going to come in around 1,290.
Okay. But the design is for 1,450 kids.
And
okay,
it costs.
So similar sized facility to house a similar number of students. Completed project, $144 million in Grand Junction.
In 2021.
And we're asking for $54 million more to do this project.
Yeah.
I think this is where you and I were disagreeing in some of the answer. I'm not trying to be confrontational, but like,
well, I think
it's a fair question.
To represent some of the people that are out there that maybe like, hey, prove that to me.
Well, I think Matt just answered it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was if you look at 4 years of, again, Western Slope construction cost escalation, which another learning from Matt, that's separate from the inflation rate, that's separate from the consumer price index. Like, you know, the number is 12 to 14%. Right. As conservatively as we can, we've said 10%, and so just adjust 144.5 over 4 years. Right? I mean, it's just basic math,
and that comes out to around about 190.
And I'll tell you, square foot wise, if you take into account escalation, we're within dollars of what it costs them per square foot.
And we don't want to parrot the same thing, but the same folks that built that school are planned to build the new Montrose High School.
It's also worth noting, you know, we are also building. We are having to redo our entire site and add in a stadium, you know, an athletic facility that they did not have to do on that site because they have community stadiums for their football and all that sort of thing. They do have fields they're putting in there. They've been able to add some more back into the project because they were on time and under budget, and so they've had some opportunity to do some more stuff on the site than they originally planned to do. But when you just look at the the building costs, we are within dollars of what it cost them to build
So
it there.
one of the other, I understand. I appreciate the fact that it's got to be tough for you guys. But these are the questions that people have,
These are good
and they
questions.
don't, and,
Totally fair.
And basic math, very true. I'm horrible at basic math, so don't anybody else out there feel bad if you didn't catch on to it either.
We were English teachers.
right?
So, yeah.
So one of the things that we talked about last time is a question that was online that I thought was really good too, and I wanted to make sure that we gave this opportunity for you to answer it. Is why not another location? Like, let's build it somewhere else. It seems like there might be better places to do this. And I was really surprised by the answer that you guys gave that I hadn't considered. Do you want to talk about that? And
Sure. I mean, one of the biggest drivers on, the point of the going to the community for the master capital planning process and through the conceptual and schematic design was to really hear what they felt about the school and what they wanted out of us when we considered what to do with it. And something we heard resoundingly was that they wanted it to stay in town. Whether we were talking to staff members, community members, and that's not to say 100% of them said that, but the vast majority, like it wasn't even close. They wanted to keep it in town. They liked the Friday night lights feel. And so that was one factor. Another factor was that the land was gifted to the school district by the Townsend family, and it was a conditional deal. Like if it had to stay and remain for educational purposes, otherwise it would go back to the family. Additionally, we have already done a lot of, while we're going to have to adjust the utilities and all the things, there are some efficiencies of building on the site. One of them being that we're going to retain the Lloyd McMillan gym. And so were we to build elsewhere, again, I don't believe it's accurate to say it would cost less. I believe it would.
But there was a third element too,
Right.
that really surprised me. For whatever reason, I'm not sure why I didn't think about it. But you talked about the actual accessibility for students, that there are a significant number of families, and I think we forget this sometimes, that live down in the middle of downtown that are within walking distance to that school, several of the schools that are there. And if you move it off site, then and I'm sure that there's an issue with busing requirements and like changing those busing schedules.
The centrality of the spot.
It's right in the middle of town. I mean, we affect a lot of businesses around that school. I think.
Yep. City market around lunchtime.
But ultimately, we heard and we believe that. I think in our presentation, one of the kids said, man, if we can get this done, this will be like the Beacon. The Beacon of Montrose. And
the other thing is,
it's right in the middle of town. And
if the school went somewhere else, who knows what would end up on that site?
Well, I've heard in certain meetings when people are asking questions, they're like, well, then you could retain that facility and do something else with it. And I'm like, no. I mean, that's the issue, right? Like that facility costs a lot to maintain, and it is a building that has a myriad of security, accessibility, systems issues. That's why we're looking at it, and to create not get rid of any of the problems, but then add a new facility. Really, to me, seems like I would not be a good steward of taxpayer dollars.
Plus, somebody could just, if it went back to the family and they sold it, somebody could just build a mega Walmart or something really rubbish. I don't want that.
Well, it
can't
has to
go anyway. But.
It would have to be retained for educational purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, just to play devil's advocate.
Right.
Would an extension or a growth of CMU's extension campus here not qualify as something that could be used on that facility or that space? Or does it have to be?
We believe, and all of the community focus groups in our planning has said we want to keep Montrose High School in the middle of town.
Okay.
So,
and that decision's been made. Essentially,
that decision is.
We're kind of,
from my perspective, that's not a we vetted that and decided that and heard resoundingly that it should stay in the middle of town. Okay. I also just want to say, from a cost standpoint, I don't think that that it's moving it would save us.
Right.
All right. So we're coming close to the end of time. Do we make sure that
the end of time? That's
the end of
really
time. End of our time.
The end of
the allowable time that you guys had for us. We've almost been at an hour now. I wanted to give you another chance because you had a great answer to what I thought was a good question. We broke down, and so here's where some of the new information in doing this a second time is actually better.
We're going to do this every time.
Right, yeah. We're just going to keep doing
purposely mess up each episode to bring people back.
So I asked you both, I said, do you know what the average house cost was in Montrose County last time?
You said a little over $300,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So new numbers have come out since then. And Zillow, this morning when I looked it up, Zillow is now reporting that the average median household value is $443,000
In the
I
county.
thought I
In the
guessed
county.
430.
I think you did say for
I
the
got
first
pretty
time.
close.
We'll
You
go
did.
back and listen to the last. Oh, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, go ahead, get it in.
440,
Get it in.
443 according to
443.
Zillow.
Yeah. So also according to the Googles, 49,000 is the median income for Montrose. So people's housing costs, the taxable amount, the assessed amount. You covered this earlier. That may not be the same thing, right?
It's definitely not the same.
The assessed value, although my assessed value went up quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, there's been an adjustment across the state. Yeah.
But the conversation that we had is I threw some numbers back out at you. So, and it was basically around that 49,000. If a single mother or a single parent is making 49,000 on their average salary, their take home before taxes is $4,083 a month. You then factor in, we asked the AI out there to do us a budget for Western Colorado and specifically for Montrose. And on the low end, it was $2,803 or something like that.
Which is housing, utilities, transport growth. I mean, it's everything.
Right. On the high end, it was $4,200. And so for that mom or single dad or single income family, my question to you was, there's not a lot of space at the end when taxes in the budget and everything else comes out, and you're asking them, even though it sounds small, $10 per 100,000, what is your response to that, to your community? Like, hey, I think I said, like, you can't really bleed any more water out of the rock type of thing, but you had a really good response. I wanted to give you a chance to say it again.
Do you remember what you said last time?
I don't know that I remember.
Okay, we're not helping you either.
Yeah. No, I think for me, it's, I first say the reason Colorado set up the way it is so a family gets to make and vote on that decision, is number one. I think that's kind of a neat deal that we've got going on. Number two, I think, the longer we wait, the more potential economic impact it can have on each family. And so I don't feel good about trying to do this over the next 6 or 8 years and figure out, because then I know it's going to cost more for the next 25 years than it would if we pass it today. And then also, I believe investing in my kids is the way to the future. Like,
do you want to help him?
I don't remember.
You had a good answer last time, and we're going to credit you
Yeah.
with that answer,
Yeah.
but we're going to have to tell you as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think that I appreciated about your last answer is you said, what it costs to take a family out.
Oh, that's where I was going. That was my fourth point. So I'll
Go
finish
ahead.
with that.
Yeah.
The notion is that, for me, I've got 2 young kids. And if I go to McDonald's, and feed them at McDonald's, I'm going to spend more than it's going to cost almost any family a month. So, I think it's worth cutting out one McDonald's trip or trying to figure out how to save a little bit on every month to invest in the future of our community and to invest in our kids, which are really our most important asset.
So you are asking, it's fair to say you're asking people to make a sacrifice
every month.
And if you have more money, well, that sacrifice is going to be less impactful on you.
Yeah.
But
I think the conversation I had, I was at Pomona.
Yeah.
And I saw
having a delicious beer.
No, Pomona Elementary,
Pomona
not the brewery.
Elementary.
Yeah.
And I was
Although
just
there is a common confusion.
I was asking questions. I was just there answering questions, and I saw
At
one
their
of my
barbecue.
former students. Yeah, at their barbecue, I saw one of my former students, and she was young there, and she's with her family, and they had 4 kids under the age of I think 10.
Oh, wow.
It was a little family, and I'm confident they're working here locally in town, probably on one income. And she looked at it. She said, "Hey, Mr. Pavlich, you remember me?" And I said, "I do." And I said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "Good." And I've made a big deal about her kids. And she said, "That's amazing." She was looking at the stuff, and she's like, "What's it going to cost?" I said, "Well, it's $198 million." And I said, "The average home thing that we did here."
Yeah.
And I said, "So, for a family that's got a property owner that's got a home in town, or if you're renting, it'll come through. That might be, between $300 and $450 a year." And she looked at me and she said, "It's worth it." And I'm like, that's powerful. That young lady, I'm confident that they are, they're in their 20s. They're at the beginning of the money earning life cycle. And she looks at that and made eye contact with me, and she says, "Well, that's nothing." And
But it's a great investment in that. If you've got 4 young kids, knowing that they're going to go through this system,
what was
that's a
powerful
great
to me
investment.
about it too is it's not nothing for that family.
No.
It's not nothing for any family, but
Right.
like, we're investing in our community. I moved here something like 17 years ago, and I've just been struck by the pride we have in our schools, by the pride we have on the Western Slope. And it's time we invest in ourselves and we invest in our kids, because, we're going to produce quality kids that are going to go out there and do quality things in the world. And that you can't do that without putting some money in the game,
I think that the reason why I wanted to bring it back up and I wanted to give you credit for it is because I think one of the other parts that's really important about that, and I feel like you're doing it right now, is sometimes people they don't disagree with the outcome, right? Like, I think that there were certainly way more people than not that think we absolutely need a new high school, but I also feel like sometimes people just want to feel heard.
Yeah.
And, to have you say that you're acknowledging the fact that for some families, it's going to be a sacrifice for us as a community as a whole to be able to have this resource.
Right.
I think that was the important thing that I wanted to capture again, to just make sure and give you the opportunity. Because I think a lot of times, we're using words like investment and towards the future and everything else. But when you're a single income family and you're somebody smaller, those aren't words that you necessarily get to use all the time.
Right.
Like investment and future and everything else. It's today, tomorrow, tonight type of thing.
And it's a sacrifice.
And I think just acknowledging that, like going forward, and to all of you out there, I hope you hear, it's something that we definitely need for the community. I'm on board with, wanting to have a new high school. I'm still on the fence of like, is today and the price and everything right? I feel like it is. But I think it's nice to acknowledge everybody that, like, hey, if we are going to move forward with this, we're knowing that it's going to be impactful to people.
Yeah.
And so,
And to close the circle for our conversation, thank you guys again for inviting us in. We encourage folks, please seek out information that's solid information. We're not going to do a whole lot of responding to Facebook comments because that's chasing your tail and it never ends. But we encourage folks, reach out to us, visit our webpage, visit our social. We're duty bound to provide the information, and then folks make the decision.
Yeah. And be thankful that you have a say. Right. I don't. I get to pay taxes here, and I don't get to vote.
Yeah. Why is that? I mean, you're from Jersey. You should be able to vote.
This is where Dennis does his shtick. Yeah. But no, it's important. Yeah. If you have a voice, have a say. Just, and the ballots, mail-in ballots are out now, right? By the time you listen to this.
They started mailing on Friday.
You can make a decision right now. And either way, just, it's the beauty of democracy.
I do want to say thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah.
We just recently had Russell Evans, who's a teacher in the school district, talking about digital citizenship. I can't tell you how important it is to have our teachers and our staff and the people that look after our children while we're all at work and doing what we do. So thank you for providing those educational opportunities and those facilities to our children in our community. I know it's not easy work, and oftentimes you're not, people don't stop and say thank you. So even if we don't agree on, how things are going to move forward or whatever it is, I'm still grateful and thankful, as I'm sure everybody else in the community is. So while you're, out there answering these questions. And if they don't always come as nice and as polite as we're trying to have them here,
Yeah, it's
I do
definitely
wanna
not everybody.
Yeah, I do want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
gentlemen.
guys.
Thanks for coming up.
Appreciate
coming back again.
Yeah.
To do this, and
So
I'm going to check
we're going to
right now.
So we're going to check you, and we'll get you back next week to do this a third time. Is that?
All right, guys. Thanks everybody. WKRP Montrose. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.